Welcome. I'm Carl Frederick, and I will be interviewing individuals for Kenosha Voices, an oral history project of the Kenosha County Historical Society in conjunction with Kenosha Community Media. I have worked in newspapers for more than 40 years as an editor and a reporter. 38 and a half of those years were at the Kenosha News. I am also a member of the Kenosha County Historical Society Board. We hope you enjoy these programs. I'm speaking with John Steinbrink Sr., longtime farmer in Pleasant Prairie and town and village official for the last 40 years and a former state legislator. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
When did your family arrive in this country and then to Kenosha?
They got in this country in the early 1900s, and 1918 they came to Pleasant Prairie.
Okay. Did they stop someplace before they came to Pleasant Prairie?
They were in Libertyville, Illinois, before they came to Pleasant Prairie, and I just kind of wish some of my grandparents were around, or parents, and I could quiz them more on that, because now it seems very interesting. Me see their past and family and how they came here and why they came here. And
okay. And on your dad's side, that's the family side that came to Pleasant Prairie.
Correct.
In 19. And what did they do for a living?
They were farmers. It
Okay.
was always farming. I believe they farmed when they were in the Netherlands, my grandparents, and then my aunts and uncles, everybody was born here in I believe Pleasant Prairie. May one was born in Libertyville, I'm not sure, but
Okay.
they were all born in Pleasant Prairie.
All right. And how big was their farm?
It was roughly maybe 80 acres, 100 acres, somewhere in that range.
Okay. And your grandmother, what did she do in relationship to the farm?
She was kind of the brains of the operation, let's put it that way. She was the aggressive one, and went after purchasing land, and actually pushed a family on doing this. And they were kind of reluctant, because it was the time, the Depression had come in, and everybody was kind of careful what they did. But I guess she had a vision for the future, and knew that to make her family and support her family, she would have to grow.
And under her stewardship and aggressiveness, how big did the farm grow to?
Well, then we bought a couple more pieces they bought in that, so then and that continued with my dad over the years, and then it became a little more development in the area, and then I took over. My father passed away in 1983. My brother in 1972, so I got left in charge of everything, kind of.
So it was the three of you.
Correct.
Until
right. And I had one more
1983.
brother, Peter.
Okay.
He lived.
And what was your responsibility on the farm with the three?
I was pretty much in charge of crops and machinery and maintenance of everything that went on there.
Okay.
And my brother handled the dairy end of it. But with his passing, then I kind of moved into the dairy end and the crop part. And my dad was kind of the overseer of everything. And when he passed, then all of a sudden, there was a lot of new stuff in my life as far as management and that of the
Running the farm. It was
running
you
the farm
and who else at that time?
It was basically just me.
What kind of help did you get?
We would get part-time help. It was really hard in this area to compete with American Motors. We couldn't meet the wages, we couldn't meet the benefits. And a lot of the part-time people grew up on a farm. They would be police officers or people at McWhite or AMC, and they just wanted some part-time work and work for cash, and they enjoyed coming and working on the farm. It was kind of probably a release for them. Brought them back to the old days when they grew up on the farm, and it provided them another source of income.
What was your first memory of farming?
As a young kid, I remember being put out on a tractor. I couldn't even reach the pedals. It was International H. And I was told to, one was raking hay, just going in a circle and trying not to hit nothing. The other was disking a field. They put me out there, and that would be in the Cooper Road area in 85th. We had some rental land there from Glackens, the Glacken family at that time. And they put me out there with this, I think it was a case at that time, a DC case, and a little disc, and when the rocks would get caught in the blades of the disc, I'd have to get off and take the crank, because those tractors all had cranks at that time, because if the starter didn't work or whatever, you got out and you cranked it. But the crank was a long, straight shaft with a curl on the end to turn it, and you wedged it in you, and you would pry the rocks out and get back on the tractor and keep going.
They just left you out there?
Well, they came for me eventually. I had other chores to do at home, so they wanted me back home. So.
Okay, so what did you do with the manure from the dairy farm?
Manure all got spread on the fields later,
days?
and a lot of it would lay on the surface and become dry in the feedlots and that. And there was a big demand for dry manure in Kenosha. A lot of the people with gardens, especially the Italian families, they would want a truckload of manure, and for $20 I would deliver a truckload of manure and shovel it off into their garden. And the funny thing was, once one neighbor got manure, everybody else had to have manure, because nobody's garden was going to be better than this guy's garden. So, but it was interesting. And then they'd give you a glass of wine. This would be in the afternoon, and you drink a big glass of that wine, and when you go home to milk cows, you're a little tipsy at the time.
So you're still farming today?
I still farm. We do hay yet. I rent the cropland out to Rob Hawkins. He comes in and farms it. But we still have ownership of the cropland, and then the hay ground, we still have the equipment, and we still bale the hay. So.
Okay. So you also decided to get involved in town government. How did that come about?
It was like in 1984. I had been involved in organizations like Farm Bureau and the co-op, things like that. And I had two family friends, one a neighbor. Kenny Barter, he used to be the town chairman at one time for Pleasant Prairie, and Shorty Wilcom, Clarence Wilcom, who ran mobile products, and today his son and grandson run mobile. But they came to me. I remember being out in the farm barnyard and talking to me and said, there's going to be an opening for the town board. We'd like you to run. And it was probably the farthest thing from my mind was being involved in politics, because I had plenty going on at the farm. And, you know, I'd been in student government. Like I said, I'd been on other organizations, but I said, okay. And we started from there. It was kind of simple how we made our signs back then compared to today. We would take wood lath and nail them together and then staple this paper that didn't hold up in the rain to the signs and put them out. And it became an interesting challenge for running like that.
And when you ran for town government and people asked you, why are you running, what would you tell them?
Things were just starting to evolve at that time. The power plant had come in. We were starting to see some movement in the government as far as the town, as far as other things coming in. And I always had an interest in my community and how it was going to grow and what was going to happen. And it was an opportunity to take part in that.
Okay. And when you were elected, I assume, because we know that.
Yeah.
And what were the first couple challenges that you remember when you first got on the town board?
Well, even before the town board was running for office, there were two in the primary challengers, Rich Bowker and Dick Randall. And Randall had the Randall's Market on Highway 50 by Cooper Road there. It was kind of ironic because when I would ride in with the milk truck and my dad to town, we would stop there, you know, and I probably never paid that much attention. I remember Mr. and Mrs. Randall, but He was, believe he was on the board before, and he wanted to get back on. And Rich Balker was actually a good friend of mine, and he is to this day too. He's a Vietnam veteran, and you'll see him at every Vietnam veteran or every veteran event going on in the county.
Okay, was there only one seat available?
Yes, at that, I believe probably the town chairman at the time. It was only a 3-man board back then. You had the chairperson and two supervisors, yeah, not trustees. That came a little later with.
Okay, so you were on the town board until Pleasant Prairie became a village?
Correct. In 1988, I believe, we started working towards becoming an incorporated community, a village. As a town, there were a lot of limits to what we could do. We had just got the Wis Park was starting then. The Joe Andrea and the utility holding bill had come forward, which allowed that to happen for the town of Pleasant Prairie. So we came to an agreement, and Pat Moran was the mayor at that time. I think it was 12 to 1,500 acres went into the city at that time. Otherwise, it had always been a nibbling at the town. When an area needed sewer and water, they would annex to the city of Kenosha. The Simmons Library at one time used to be part of the town of Pleasant Prairie, just to show you how much has gone over the years. But we had to visit with people and tell them what was going to happen. I think there were about 75 people went into the city or into the town of Summers at the time when we became a village. Some of them we offered services yet, like the Summers people over off of 31, east of 31, kind of where Stein's Garden Center is there and that. And other ones went into the city. It did create some hard feelings with those people because they wanted to remain residents of Pleasant Prairie, but that is what happens when this evolution of government takes place.
So how difficult was the transition from town to village?
There was a lot of changeover. We used to be under county zoning and that, and then we took up our own. We had to get a zoning administrator. Gene Werby came into the picture. We expanded the board from 3 members to 5, and I believe it was Mike Serpy came on board and Skip Gerard came on. Oh no, not Skip yet. Roger Prang, who had been the longtime overseer of the town, let's put it that way. And when at that point, when I came into government, Mike Polikoff had joined government at the same time, and Jim Horvath.
He came on as the town
administrator.
Okay.
And our police department grew, our fire department grew. All our services were kind of growing, and a lot of the challenges facing us were sewer and water. As areas grew, we brought sewer and water into them, and then we were able to supply those services to other residents in the area that didn't have that opportunity before. And along with that came agreements with the city of Kenosha for sewer and water, and those evolved over time as the village grew and the city changed in a way as to the point of source for water, and PG&E came into the picture, the peaker plant for power to assist in things. Power was the big thing in our area at the time. We had a source of power that brought people to our community, business people, because we had a reliable source of power. We had unlimited clean water from Lake Michigan. We were between Milwaukee and Chicago. It was an area that was quite desirable to move into.
Was the population growing before this, or had it started to slip back until Wis Park?
There were small subdivisions came in, a lot of them with really the proper services to be there. A lot of them didn't have the proper sewer and water at the time. The roads were, you were still with ditches and that. There was a lot of concern with flooding and water and drainage issues throughout the village. And
were there any issues with wells?
Wells became an issue because a lot of the old sewer systems simply drained out into field tiles, and when you got closer to the lake on there, you had a sandier soil, and all of a sudden you had that infiltration. There was a couple landfills to the south in Illinois, and that made you would see a lot of the wells turning up with E. coli. So they needed a source. Our bigger wells that we used, the Timber Ridge and the Laddish Tower, they were deeper wells, and they ran into radium issues at the time. And then all of a sudden, the DNR and the state started saying, you guys have to solve this problem. And the early solution was dilution. We would get water from the city and mix it with that to bring that count down on the water for the uranium or the
Radium.
radium, not uranium. No, we didn't glow in the dark. It was just radium. But
Was radium kind of unique to the Pleasant Prairie area?
we have a base, limestone base down there, and that seems to be a source for it. I remember when there were issues at one time, the large landfill wanted to come into the area. Residents definitely said no. The town and village said no. And then the other choice would have been, okay, we can put a big gravel pit in over in that area by Chewauke over there, the area off of Sheridan, and that was also turned down. So we had all the right ingredients for wells like that had a radium problem.
Okay, so sewer and water was an issue in the village, and subdivisions started to come in.
Correct.
Did they come in just from all over the place? How did you manage that as a village?
It was a slow growth of that. Luckily, we had gone, Jean Werby and her planning unit, and set up our own criteria for what we wanted to see. We had standards everybody had to meet. As I said, there were some drainage issues in the village. And many times when a new subdivision would come in, we'd make them retain their water and slowly release it. And at the same time, we would solve some of those earlier drainage issues that weren't taken care of before. And we could do that with the new development. So it kind of worked together to solve some of the early problems.
And how did the longtime residents look at this growth and this development into Pleasant Prairie?
As we evolved and came through, the long-term residents always kind of liked it the way it was. Some of them understood there would be growth and things would change. Other ones said, well, I'm here, I like the open field, I don't want neighbors. I enjoy watching the fox and the rabbits and the deer, and let me be the last one into the village and close the doors. But that's not practical for a government, and especially to maintain your tax rate and that. You have to continue to grow and do it in a balanced method. And for the village, it was a balanced method of bringing in the Lakeview Corporate Park businesses, companies, creating jobs, and balancing the tax rate between those two things for the residents.
And before the corporate park, what industry was in Pleasant Prairie?
There was really nothing in the village at the time. They said there were two heavy industries. And Jerry Kramer, who had a construction company, and John Steinbrink on his farm. So it was kind of funny at the time, but we really didn't have anything going for us. Laddish Triclover maybe was out on Highway H where I lived there. They had moved out, but nothing else really in the village at that time. No shopping opportunities, not much of anything out there.
So at some point, being now in village government for 6 years or so, you decided to run for a state legislature.
Yes.
What brought that on?
Joe Andrea was retiring at that time. Bob Wirch, who was the assembly person for my area, was moving up and running for Senate at that time. And I was approached by Wayne Kessel and Joe Andrea to run for state assembly for my district.
And you said?
I had to think about it a little bit. These things are all new to me. I had been in town government and just been elected the village president and that. So apparently they liked the way things were going in the village and wanted that kind of leadership to go into the state politics part of it.
So you decided to run.
I did.
Kind of a campaign? What was it? How was the campaign for state assembly different from running for village government?
With the town government or village government, there really wasn't. You sent out your flyers. You worked the neighborhoods. You weren't that many people. When we went into the assembly race, all of a sudden, we're going to church festivals, we're going to union dinners, we're going to church events at night. All these things I never did because as a farmer, that wasn't on my schedule. My wife loved it though. She loved getting out, she loved meeting people, and that was probably my biggest asset in government was my wife. She knew so many people and so much involvement through the school where the kids were growing up and going to school, and all part of these different things that she brought me a treasure load of votes and people that believed in me. So,
and did you have a platform or ideas of what you hope to accomplish as a state legislator?
I think I offered to make sure they don't forget about us at home. A lot of times the state would do things that would put a lot of hardship on local communities and the residents. Unfunded mandates, let's call it that. And the one thing local government hates are unfunded mandates. You shall do this, but we're not going to pay you for it. And what do you do to pay for it? You got to raise taxes. And then as time went along, they started saying, well, you can't raise taxes, but you still have to meet all the demands that are out there. Police, fire, you have to provide all these services, but you can't raise taxes. And that's a real challenge when you're in local government. So people like good service, but they don't want to pay for it if they can help it. But
So how long were you in the assembly?
16 years.
And did you like being an
I
assembly?
enjoyed it. I probably enjoyed it more in the beginning. There was a different feeling of being in Madison. The two sides kind of worked together more. We traveled together around the state. I was on a lot of committees for natural resources, agriculture, transportation. So we would go to meetings around the state. We would dine together. We would even stay room together. We basically got along. When I went in there was, I'll call them a lot of old farts. And a lot of them were from rural areas, and they had a background in farming or business or something, and they really understood how to represent their community and work together to get things done. And Tommy Thompson was the governor at that time, and you couldn't find a better person to work with than Tommy Thompson if you wanted to make good for your community. Because Tommy understood that if a community does well, the state does well. And he always had the people that were willing to help and listen and get these projects done that we needed to happen. And he did quite a bit down in our area, especially working with Joe Andrea. He was able to accomplish a lot of things down here that really benefited our area.
And who's running the farm while you're out being a state legislator?
At that time, I got out of the dairy business. I was running just the cropland and that. We had a few young stock. I would come home a lot of times at night. I would drive back from Madison. I wasn't one of the stay up there forever people. I would be home and drive back early in the morning for the meetings we would have and that. Madison was basically a Tuesday through Friday, getting out of there sometimes on Thursday. And the village was always, it seemed like, on a Monday. So it worked out pretty well, but it's you always seem to have every night of your life accounted for, let's put it that way.
And then what happened that made you say, I've had enough with state government?
There was redistricting at the time, and my district was moved out into the rural area more. They took away a lot of the city of Kenosha from me. I was left with Pleasant Prairie, and then moving farther west out there. And I used to say, the good news is I know all the farmers out here. The bad news is I know all the farmers out here, and they will not vote for a Democrat. So no matter who it is, they will not pull that lever. So so that kind of put an end to that career, and it was good. I could concentrate more on the village after that, and
Okay.
because there was more happening in the village at that time, actually, too.
Yeah, were there any TIF districts in Pleasant Prairie?
TIFs, that was one of our big tools for growth in the village, was a TIF district. We actually retired our first TIF district, gave a rebate back to the taxpayers, created other TIF districts that allowed us to bring businesses in, and you'll see a lot of them in the park, Uline, Haribo, big names, paint companies, food processing companies, and now we're even into medical companies with Nexus, and they just were bought out by the other company there. And when you get a company like these in there, all of a sudden you have their suppliers wanting to move into the area too. And as I said, the village had a reliable source of power with our power plant there. The location was ideal for them. We had schools in the area with Parkside and our other facilities out here. Gateway, training employees the way companies wanted them. Pretty much Chrysler had slowed down, so we had a lot of trained people from that workplace in the job market, which fit the needs of a lot of the companies coming into the area. So we became very desirable at that time as a location to bring your company. Maybe do away with your old method of manufacturing, bring something newer and more efficient in. They were able to retool, and a lot of companies expanded once they came here. And it's been a success story for almost all the companies that have come into this area, Pleasant Prairie and Kenosha.
Do you have any idea how many employees are now in that park?
I did. Off the top of it, I can't. Our daytime population really grew, which put more of a strain on your police department and that, because there was issues that would arise, different things, and more traffic and more rescue calls, different things like that. So,
Are there any TIF districts today?
yes, there's. I think we're up to number 12. And that kind of went in where the power plant used to exist. When the power plant left, that's being developed, and we brought services into that area, and it continues some of the other future growth areas in the village with TIF 12.
But you didn't lose the power, just the power plant.
Just the power plant. There's still plenty of power running through here on the transmission lines.
Okay. How is growth at this moment now? Are there any plans for certain areas to develop, areas not to develop? Lake Andrea and the area there, are anything going on in those areas?
Well, you mentioned Lake Andrea, and that was brought in. We had a gravel pit there before. We wanted it, as a town, we wanted to just turn it over to the county. And I remember the county said to us, you give us $25,000 and we'll take it off your hands. We're not giving you $25,000. So we developed it into Lake Andrea. And then a little bit down, we developed the Recplex, which is the largest municipally owned recreation facility in the country that's not on the tax rolls. It pays for itself. You saw additions to that. You saw the 2 ice rinks. You see the swimming pool. All that bringing people and things into the area. A lot of triathlons happen on Lake Andrea. People love coming to the area. It's very clean water in there. It's all spring fed. It's a perfect area to ride your bike and hike around, or for triathlons, it was perfect. A lot of us volunteered in the early days to make all those things a success, and the people running those things never forget it. And we were in a location, we would get people from all over the country coming, even some from Europe and Asia, coming here to run in the triathlons. They liked the area. They liked being all the amenities we had to offer. They liked being close to Milwaukee, Chicago, easy to get here with the airports we have available. And the recreation just kind of grew. And that was something I never had when I grew up. There was no recreation to be had whatsoever in Pleasant Prairie. I would play softball in the city, sometimes county softball. Basketball was at night maybe for different leagues, and we would play in a church or somewhere like that. Nothing for the population in the village. When the Recplex came in, we could offer all these activities to the youth. People loved it. It was a form of something they didn't have. People loved living here. It was an extra benefit to them and their families. It probably creates a more healthy lifestyle than you would have without it. So, and businesses liked it. It was an opportunity to their employees to take part in a healthy lifestyle.
Okay. You mentioned the planned development and growth over time in Pleasant Prairie. How does what you have done and the rest of the town government, village government, and the people and staff, how does the development in Pleasant Prairie differ from, let's say, development in Northern Illinois?
Probably was above board. I don't know if I should say that, but we would get developers coming here that expected something different than we were going to give them. Gene made it clear from the start, this is not what's going to happen. All of us shared a vision for the community. We kind of set up that vision and stuck to it. And that has really helped us over the years, that we didn't do one thing that would screw up another thing. Everything helped along the way. We planned out our sewer and water, so we had sizing enough so it could service all the areas we took care of. You look at our roads in the area, and working with the state and the county, think of Highway 50 as a 2-lane highway. Think of Highway 31 as a 2-lane highway. You can still see 31 on some of the frontage roads. Now it's a 6-lane road. Imagine that traffic. The interstate, I-94, I expanded that when I was on the Transportation Committee and trans chairman up in Madison. And that was one thing we looked at, was improving that corridor, because that is the lifeline of coming into Wisconsin, not only our community, but other communities. And that is really paying off the work that happened there. And you look at the interstate, the businesses that have sprung up there, and it got their attention, and they wanted to come here.
Were residents or government a little bit leery of the traffic that the development would bring?
Yeah, I think we were aware of that because we had been to other communities. We had seen the change there. I remember going out to LA early in the 60s, and you could pretty much drive around and get places, and later it became a disaster. You went to Northern Illinois and you saw the congestion because the roads couldn't handle the influx of people and businesses up there, and it became kind of a gridlock. And we didn't want that to happen here. So working with the DOT, we do traffic counts. We project into the future how roads would have to be improved to handle that kind of traffic, and it's worked out quite well.
Okay, and it's been 40 years. Do you have any plans for the future?
I think I might be looking forward to retirement here. 40 years, it might be time to turn it over to other people. I think I'll work with whoever's going to run to make sure they share the vision that the village has had over the years, to see that we continue on the path we're going. You know, it used to be a great thing to have prime outlets out by the interstate, and that was kind of our landmark for people. Oh, we're going to Pleasant Prairie, they got a big shopping outlet there. We now have other things. You look at Prairie Ridge, that development there. We have the hospital in there. We have Costco now, Target, restaurants beyond belief, and you never would have dreamed of. JCPenney. I mean, these were things that did not exist when I grew up. And it's the kind of shopping people want, and we're seeing a lot of young families move into the area, not only because we have a shopping experience, because they can now come here and live, raise a family, recreate, and have a good job, because that's what's all part of the package we have to offer here. And it's what the future is going to hold too, is to maintain that quality of life. And that's going to be the big goal for people in the future, to expand that. We've put in another fire station. We put in a new police department. We're making sure we meet the demand that's going to happen in the future, to make sure people feel safe, they feel at home, and they feel like this is the place they want to live and raise a family.
Do you think that Pleasant Prairie officials have always been one step ahead of what might be coming to be able to deal with it?
I think that's part of being the planning process. And once again, I'll drop Gene Werby's name and Mike Polikoff, two people that had a vision for the future and knew what to do and how to do it to make sure the right things happened. And it's not just them. You had to bring the other right people on board to handle the other jobs in the village, to make sure we're all pulling together, because we're a pretty lean community with our taxation rate, one of the lowest in the state, and yet we provide everything you're ever going to want to see in services, and do it on a pretty tight budget. And that's something we're proud of too. But it's one of the biggest challenges we have, is meeting that filling that need and filling those services with some of the mandates put on us by the state of Wisconsin. You know, and I mean, it's great when they can beat their chest up there and say, we're going to limit taxes and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Well, for a growing young community like Pleasant Prairie, that was a real challenge. We didn't have the ability to fund that growth, and especially with TIFs, where TIFs, you get that money in the future, but you're providing services today for a lot of the subdivisions, the businesses out there, and that's where I got to credit the employees of Pleasant Prairie for stepping up and doing the job, that we could get it done with the resources we had.
Thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me, and I enjoyed this. I went back, as I told you, my mother clipped every clipping from when I started in politics and put them in. She's probably got 20 volumes of scrapbooks, and I went back and read it, and I was surprised and delighted at everything I could remember and what I had forgot, and how the community in the area has grown. And it's something that I think everybody involved in that growth can be proud of. So thank you for having me.